দর্শক শুভেচ্ছা সবাইকে স্বাগত আজকের চলতে অনুষ্ঠানে আপনাদের সঙ্গে থাকছে মাহফুজ মিশু আর আজকে আমার অতিথি বাংলাদেশে যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের রাষ্ট্রদূত অ্যাম্বাসেডর পিটার হাস মোস্ট ওয়েলকাম টু আওয়ার শো
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. I'm doing well, thank you.
Ambassador, it's almost 5 months you are here in Dhaka, so how life is here? That's my first question, as well as definitely you have some idea about Bangladesh, about the Dhaka and Bangladeshi people. And how it stands right now? Is it changed or it remains the same after 5 months?
So there's really no way to really imagine what Bangladesh will be like from afar. And so since coming here, I've been just really impressed by the warmth and the hospitality of the people. And I recently went back to Washington and I carried 3 messages with me based on my first couple of months here. The first was that the accomplishments of Bangladesh are real. The success of the past 50 years, socioeconomic development, the number of people lifted out of poverty, just the progress, fastest growing economy in Asia, and that, I mean, these are real successes. The second thing is that the challenges Bangladesh faces are real as well. Impacts of climate change, now with the food price inflation, the question of human rights and democracy, and just how Bangladesh proceeds as it moves to a middle-income country, that these are real challenges. But the third message, and I think this is the most important, is that we have tremendous opportunities to work with Bangladesh and to partner with Bangladesh over the next 50 years to really accompany Bangladesh on its journey. And I think the other thing that I came away with is that I think the challenges for the next 50 years for Bangladesh are nothing compared to the challenges it has already overcome in the past 50 years. So I'm not saying the road will be easy, but it'll be easier than it was to get here.
Yeah, and we are celebrating 50 years of our friendship both in Dhaka as well as Washington. So what's your evaluation as an ambassador of USA here in Bangladesh? Where our relation stands right now and where we would like to go? I mean, after 50 years, where will we stand regarding Bangladesh-US relationship?
So I think the relationship is really strong. You've seen over the course of these past 5 or 6 months the huge number of dialogues that we've had at very senior levels, everywhere from the foreign minister speaking with the Secretary of State, dialogues on military cooperation, on economic cooperation, on security, just investment, all of these areas. And I always like to say that we're willing to go as fast as Bangladesh is for the next 50 years and expanding all aspects of our partnership, because I really believe there are tremendous opportunities with this relationship and a lot we can learn from each other.
Yeah, I have a question regarding 1971. In 1971, a lot of American people were praying for Bangladesh. They arranged concert and donation program for Bangladeshi people during our independence. But somehow, at that time, American administration or government was not in favor of Bangladesh. Definitely, you have some explanation regarding this one.
Well, the one thing I would say is that we can't change the past.
Yeah.
1971 and our reaction at the time was what it was. But I think if you look at the last 50 years of our relationship, that the story speaks for itself. So in the past 50 years, we've provided more than $8 billion of assistance to Bangladesh. We have seen the number of travelers expand exponentially. We have developed this partnership, and I think you see it with the COVID-19 response, where the United States is the single largest donor of vaccines to Bangladesh.
And 6.8.
More than 75 million. And we're about to start we're going to provide millions more as Bangladesh starts vaccinating your children. And so I think when you look at the 50 years, that the context or the history is one of just this incredible friendship and partnership.
And what is the priority areas of our relationship right now? If I want to ask you to say about 5 top priority of US-Bangladesh government-to-government relationship, what would be this?
So we do this regularly as we develop what we call the integrated country strategy, which is kind of bureaucratic. But we just published ours for Bangladesh, and it's available publicly. So we have 5 main priorities, as you suggest. I think the first one is this whole issue of human rights, civil society, rule of law, and how do you create a system, especially with the elections coming up, where Bangladeshis are free to express their opinions, free to vote, and just free to participate in a democratic society. So I think that's one of our top priorities. The second priority, of course, is security within Bangladesh and within the region. And so we provide millions and millions of dollars every year for police training, for assistance, counterterrorism, all of those areas. And then also are looking to expand our military security relationship, again, for a stable Bangladesh in a stable region. The third is economic prosperity. We're already the largest foreign direct investor in Bangladesh. We're your largest export partner. But we can expand that so much and help develop the country economically. The fourth area is socio and economic stability. So things like we've been a tremendous partner on health issues, on education issues, that as we move towards forward with the impacts of climate change, how do we make sure that Bangladesh is a resilient country that can weather all of these things? And then the fifth priority is the Rohingya, something where we very much look forward to their repatriation when the situation exists. But in the meantime, how do we take care of those people? How do we help Bangladesh take care of those people who fled genocide? And so those are our 5 priorities. Yeah.
So as you have said the priority areas, definitely you also found some challenges here to keep these agendas alive and work with the Bangladeshi government. Can you please share us what are the challenges between our relationship?
So I tend to focus on where the positive areas are rather than the challenges. But the challenges are there and they're legitimate. The United States is a sovereign nation, Bangladesh is a sovereign nation. We're going to have disagreements on things. And I think the important thing is a couple of things. One is to focus on the direction we want to go and continue to make progress in those. And then to recognize those areas where we disagree and either agree to disagree or to figure out how to move forward on them so that the negative areas don't undermine all of the positive things that we're already doing together and that we can continue to do together.
There is an idea between mass people as well as among some diplomats that Washington is seeing Bangladesh in the prism of Delhi. How do you define this? Or is it true, or direct Washington and Dhaka, we have direct communication normally?
I hear that all the time. I have no idea how people come up with that. Bangladesh is the 8th most populous country in the world. It is a pivot point in the entire Indo-Pacific. It is an important culture with a fabulous history. And the idea that we look at it through India, I just find that ridiculous. And it certainly plays no part in how I view Bangladesh.
Okay, then I recall your speech at BIS, Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Studies, and there you said 2 or 3 months ago that election has been started here in Bangladesh. So what do you really want to mean by this statement?
So I think there's an important differentiation between the day elections occur, the actual polling on the day, and the electoral process. And when I talk about elections have already started, I mean, our presidential elections for 2024 have already started in the United States, and you can see that. But what I mean is everything in place or being worked towards so that on the day of elections, Bangladeshis will have a chance to freely, fairly, transparently, and without violence choose their next government. And so in order to do that, you need all of the conditions to be in place right now. Is the media free to report? Are people free to assemble without fear of violence? Is there a positive attitude towards elections and a commitment by everyone for democracy? Is the Electoral Commission playing the role it needs to? Are political party leaders? Is the government? Is civil society? That each of these has a unique role to play, and unless every one of them plays their role and allows the others to play their role, it is only then that on election day you can have free, fair, transparent elections.
Oh, fantastic explanation. And you met Chief Election Commissioner, I think, 2 times.
Yes.
One time you separately, and other times with a group. So what your now understanding regarding upcoming election? Because there is a lot of tension is going on as the election process, regarding election process, the 2 major political parties not in the same pace.
I think the thing that I would say there is, and I've said this before, the United States has no favorite political party. We don't favor any political party over the other. The only thing that we're concerned about, again, is that the Electoral Commission play its constitutionally mandated role and that everyone else play their role. And it's only if everyone plays the role that you have good elections. Any weak link undermines the ability to have those elections.
Ambassador, you have said the first priority of US-Bangladesh relationship is now human rights. And I want to ask you about the present human rights situation here in Bangladesh. And you know, from United Nations to other human rights agencies, they have some concern regarding the human rights situation here in Bangladesh. What's your observation? That I want to know, but before then I have to take a break and I'll come back to you. দর্শক ছোট্ট একটা বিরতি নিচ্ছে, আমরা কথা বলছি ঢাকায় যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের রাষ্ট্রদূতের সঙ্গে, ফিরছি একটু পরে, আমাদের সঙ্গে থাকবেন। দর্শক বিরতির পর স্বাগত আরেকবার, আমরা কথা বলছি অ্যাম্বাসেডর পিটার হাসের সঙ্গে। অ্যাম্বাসেডর, my question was regarding human rights situation here in Bangladesh. So how do you evaluate the situation right now?
So one of the things, for better or for worse, that the United States does is every year we publish a human rights report on Bangladesh. Actually, we do it for every country. And so it's no secret that we're concerned about the trends. We're concerned about shrinking civil space. We're concerned about the Digital Security Act. We're concerned about the draft legislation on digital privacy, enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, labor rights. And so we're very open and transparent about what those concerns are. And as I mentioned before, this is in the context of upcoming national elections. And so against that backdrop, we have real concerns which we are not afraid to raise both privately and publicly in Bangladesh.
And several times you have raised this issue with your meetings with the policymakers here in Bangladesh. So what kind of response you get from them?
So there you're going to have to ask them. I would not want to characterize what they say to me.
But why human rights is so important for any country, especially in the democratic country?
So this has been a shift under President Biden, where he has said that human rights are at the center of our foreign policy. And it's for a couple of reasons that we see it as both a security and an economic issue. So economically, and as Bangladesh graduates to middle income status, that we believe that rule of law and strong human rights protections, strong labor rights protections are actually fundamental to the further economic development of a country. So we see it very much from that standpoint, and then also from a security standpoint, that again, good, strong human rights, rule of law are essential to a country that is stable and peaceful. And so we see them as very much linked to our foreign policy, and that's why we've put an emphasis on it.
And you have told about Digital Security Act, and perhaps you have the information that how sometimes if the law minister several times said that it will not be abused, especially for the journalists, but it happens. So you raised this concern many times. So what's your stand, that it should be abolished or it should be corrected?
Again, that's a decision for Bangladesh and the government here to make the decision. But I think the question is, and it's a legitimate concern, of how much free speech do you allow relative to how much security. And so that free speech does not provoke, and it's finding that balance, which is incredibly difficult. And I know the Bangladesh government has asked a number of international bodies, including the UN, to look at the Digital Security Act and to come up with suggestions. But it'll be up to Bangladesh to make the decision on exactly how they want to make that calibration.
Yeah, US is one of the largest investors here in Bangladesh. You have big companies, and there are some companies who paid the highest tax among all the foreign companies like Chevron and other things. So how do you see the investment situation here in Bangladesh? And definitely you have communication with the upcoming investors. What are the challenges they are facing?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that we're not only one of the largest investors, we are the largest foreign direct investor in Bangladesh, both in terms of total investment to date, and last year we were the largest single country in terms of investment. And there are incredible opportunities here. Again, 165 million people, rapidly growing economy, rapidly growing middle class, lots of opportunities. But one of the challenges is that Bangladesh isn't the only country in the world where Americans can choose to invest. You're competing against a lot of other countries. As you move to lower middle income status, you will be competing against a different set of countries. And so in order to be the most competitive, companies, US companies will look for places with good rule of law, a good legal framework, the ability to export any profits. They'll be looking at infrastructure, how easy it is to get things in and out of the country. They'll be looking at levels of corruption. They'll be looking at the education levels of the people. And so it's within this context that it's not only that Bangladesh needs to market itself as a good investment destination, but it also needs to benchmark itself against primary competitors for foreign direct investment, because Bangladesh has a relatively low level of foreign direct investment relative to the size of the economy compared with other countries at the same economic status.
Okay, so is there any plan to invest more, and some more big companies willing to invest here or open their branches here in Bangladesh?
There's certainly huge interest among American companies, and the U.S.-Bangladesh Business Council, which was recently they had a visit earlier this year. They had lots and lots of interest, and so people are exploring the market. They're looking at opportunities, and there are opportunities on energy, on renewable energies, on dredging, on infrastructure, in information technology. But again, it's in this context of they're looking at Bangladesh, and then maybe they're flying to another country afterwards, and then they're saying, okay, so which one's better? So there's tremendous amount of interest, but individual companies make up their own mind.
And their own decision. So what's your suggestion? What can Bangladesh do to attract those investors and keep them here in Bangladesh?
It probably goes back to the rule of law, of making sure that all tenders are open, that court judgments are enforced, that people have access, that the rules are predictable, and then probably also the basic infrastructure, the ease of importing and exporting, those kinds of things. So the business environment with a special eye towards foreign direct investment.
Yeah, and you know, Bangladesh is going to be graduated from LDCs, and that's a big achievement, undoubtedly, but it also creates some challenges, especially in our export-import business, and USA is the single largest market for our ready-made garments and other things. So what would be the future after LDC graduation, and what new challenge Bangladesh have to face after that?
So in relation to Bangladeshi ready-made garments exports to the United States, graduation to lower middle income status will have no impact on our existing rules and regulations on imports. But overall for the economy, the challenges of being a middle income country are immense. Certainly with the EU and whether they will be able to continue to provide preferential access, a huge thing. But then also there are a number of international obligations regarding intellectual property rights protection. I know that the EU itself is going to focus very much on labor rights and what the situation is there. And so Bangladesh will be held to a higher status or a higher standard compared to Bangladesh as a developing, or as a LDC, Bangladesh as a middle income country. The rules are tougher, the standards are higher, and Bangladesh is going to, and I think Bangladesh wants to meet those standards, and, but it's going to be a challenge making that transition.
And are we in the right track? I mean, Bangladesh government is in the right track to meet those new challenges?
It's hard for me to say. It's several years out, but all I will say is that the work plan probably has to be pretty intense over this time period.
If I recall the Rana Plaza tragedy, the big garment incident, and that time our partners like USA said that was like a wake-up call for our garment industry regarding labor rights, their security and other issues. And government definitely took some initiative and some changes have been done. But still, especially the countries from European Union, they are very much concerned about the labor rights here in Bangladesh. What's US stand regarding labor rights here in Bangladesh?
We're also very concerned. I think the important thing is to acknowledge the incredible progress Bangladesh has made, particularly in the ready-made garments sector in terms of worker safety. And so on worker safety, it's been tremendous progress. But the reality is when you look at the global picture on labor rights, there are still a couple of areas that are very important to us where we've not seen the same level of progress. So one is in sectors where Bangladesh doesn't export. We still see, and the headlines bear this out, the safety issues in lots of different sectors within Bangladesh, the labor issues, child labor, which Bangladesh is again making great strides on, but which are still a problem. Some of the issues related to recruiters, of people recruiting people to work overseas. But I think the biggest thing that is not yet been understood is that we are focusing a lot on freedom of association for labor, the ability to form unions, the ability to do collective bargaining, the ability to do that without interference by the government, the ability to apply to form a union and not have 100 bureaucratic hurdles put into place. But we view that as a fundamental part of labor rights and of democracy.
Yeah. Ambassador, US is the biggest donor for Bangladesh in some cases, as well as we have some programs with the Rohingyas as well as host communities. So what are the future plan of US donation on the development of Bangladesh? That's I want to ask you and hear from it. But before then again, I have to take a break. দর্শক আবারও ছোট্ট একটা বিরতি নিচ্ছি, আমরা ফিরছি একটু পরে, আমাদের সঙ্গে থাকবেন নিশ্চয়ই। দর্শক স্বাগত একবার, আমরা কথা বলছি যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের রাষ্ট্রদূতের সঙ্গে, অ্যাম্বাসেডর পিটার হাস। মাই কোশ্চেন ওয়াজ অ্যাবাউট দ্য as a donor country, USA is doing a lot here in Bangladesh, and many project is going on under USAID and some other local partners. So what are your priority areas? And you know, all the world is suffering after Russia-Ukraine crisis financially, as well as the market is very high. In this crisis, what's your plan regarding your donation to Bangladesh?
So maybe I'll take those in a couple of steps. So first, I will just say that the impacts on global food security, on fuel price hikes, that is the direct result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, unprovoked. And I think it's also important to realize that the solution to that problem lies with Russia as well. Because I think the basic fact is, if Ukraine stops fighting, Ukraine no longer exists. If Russia stops fighting, the war's over. And so I think it's important to put that into the context. In terms of our development assistance, Bangladesh is the largest recipient of our development assistance in Asia. It's more than $200 million a year that the people of the United States provide. The focus up until now and currently is very much on health and education and some work on food security, on economic growth, and other things. But I think we're at a turning point in terms of our relationship because Bangladesh is at a turning point. And so, given the remarkable success on socioeconomic areas of Bangladesh, and as you graduate to middle income status, that our focus will likely shift more towards how do we build the institutions for Bangladesh that allows it to continue this fantastic growth. So we move perhaps from, primary health care where we're helping even in terms of vaccine donations, which are critical and where we've played a critical role. But in the future, how does Bangladesh plan for these things? How does it become resilient? How does it set the legal framework for future economic growth? So it'll probably be a much different focus going forward.
Yeah, Ambassador, USA is the dream destination for Bangladeshi students, and every year the number of Bangladeshi students in US top universities is increasing, as well as we have a big community there in Bangladesh. How do you evaluate the Bangladeshi diaspora's role in USA as well as the Bangladeshi students who are studying in US universities?
There's nothing I love more than knowing that a Bangladeshi student is studying in the United States. And this year alone, this summer alone, we've had 10,000 Bangladeshi students apply for visas. Yes. And as you know, with all of the backlogs and everything because of COVID, we've even had to have several days where we opened on Friday and only did students. And so it's super exciting. Bangladesh is the fastest growing country in terms of their citizens studying in the United States, and it's critical for the bilateral relations. In some ways, if I'm honest, the relations of students who have studied and come back and the diaspora, in many ways, is more important than the government-to-government relations. And so we just love it when they study there.
My next question is about, in the very beginning you have said Rohingya is one of your priority areas here in Bangladesh, and it's a huge size of people, and we don't find any solution very recently because repatriation is not going to happen. So in United Nations Security Council, the stand of USA government is very much clear to Bangladesh. So what do you think, when the problem might be solved, or do you find any hope of solving this problem as the problem created from Myanmar?
First, you're right. Burma created this problem. The solution lies within Burma. Absolutely clear. Second, and I think it's really important for people to remember this as we approach the 5-year anniversary of the genocide that took place in Burma, is that Bangladesh made a very courageous and principled stand in allowing those refugees to flee genocide and to come to Bangladesh. And neither Bangladesh nor the international community had any idea that they would still be here 5 years later. And so that sign of generosity, that openness, really needs to be celebrated because it has created difficulties for Bangladesh, for your people. But it's really critical to realize, as you said, that the conditions for a voluntary, peaceful, dignified return, safe return to Burma aren't there, and the military junta there is showing no sign of creating those conditions. And so it becomes a real challenge on what do we do now that's the best. And there, I think we, the United States, who have provided already $1.7 billion for support of the Rohingya and the host communities around it, but it's really critical that we move from sort of this emergency response of just feeding and sheltering to how do you handle the situation now in terms of providing education, in terms of providing livelihoods for the refugees, for ensuring their security, because you have people who have now spent 5 years without hope. And so how do you create that hope so that when the situation is right for them to return to Burma, that they can go there and be educated and have skills that they can take back with them. And so that's the real challenge that we need to focus on now.
But these people are homeless, they are stateless, and they have no work in hand. So there are a lot of challenges. Many bad people can use them in some bad words like insurgency or extremism or terrorism. And if really that happened, not only Bangladesh will suffer, the whole region have to suffer. So our neighboring countries, our countries of this region, they also should play some role for their own interest, right, in this issue.
Well, so the United States has been pushing ASEAN to play a more constructive role in this. It is true that it's a potential regional problem, but in terms of what the United States is doing here in Bangladesh, then I think our real focus is on creating those livelihoods for the people in the camp so that they have money, they have a sense of purpose, they have jobs, they're being educated using the Myanmar curriculum. And so my focus, at least, is much more on how do we create the conditions in the camps so they don't turn towards becoming victims of these other criminal elements.
Okay. So, as I remember, one of US policymakers have said Bangladesh is the center point of IPS, Indo-Pacific strategy, and I know it's a big issue for US government. And the location of Bangladesh and geopolitical status of Bangladesh also very important for IPS, I think. So why do you want Bangladesh to be involved with this strategy, and how Bangladesh can be benefited from IPS?
Yeah, I think there's some confusion around the Indo-Pacific strategy. It's not something you join. You fill out an application and suddenly you're part of the Indo-Pacific. Right. There's no membership. It's a set of principles, and one that many countries in the region share, of a free and open Indo-Pacific that is prosperous, resilient, secure, stable, where every country has the ability to exercise its sovereign right to make its own decisions. And the Prime Minister, when she was in Paris last year for the Peace Forum, used a number of those exact same words: free, open, inclusive. And so I don't think there's a huge difference in how Bangladesh and the United States and the rest of us approach this. So it's much more of a concept and how we can work together for this free, fair, connected, prosperous, democratic area, as opposed to being a member or not being a member.
But sometimes some countries, especially China, try to tell that it's a framework against Chinese, and sometimes the diplomat from China also said Bangladesh not to join there. So how Bangladesh can be benefited if Bangladesh would be with IPS?
So again, it's up to Bangladesh to make that decision. But if you go through the elements, free and open, I think Bangladesh would agree. Resilient.
Bangladeshis also agree.
Yeah. Secure. Connected. Prosperous. And ability to exercise their to maintain their sovereignty. I don't see anything there that Bangladesh would be allergic to.
Okay. Then what about Quad? It's a 4 countries initiative, right? Is there any chance to other countries like Bangladesh and others to be incorporated with the Quad activities?
Again, Quad is, yes, it's called Quad. It is 4 countries. It's not a membership organization either. It is 4 large, important, like-minded countries in the region who have decided to coordinate together on important challenges in the region, from security. The 4 have coordinated on COVID vaccine development and distribution. The 4 are talking about economic hurdles and how to coordinate and cooperate economically in the region. And so, again, it's 4 countries that are deciding to coordinate and talk to each other about this very important region.
But other countries have any role to play there?
So certainly in the sense that all four of us talk to all kinds of other countries, and we very much welcome their input. But right now it's just a voluntary grouping of four countries. There's no treaty, there's no agreement. It's just four leaders getting together to talk about important things.
Yeah, you are only 5 months here in Dhaka, and a lot of bilateral meetings already have done. So 2.5 years normally you have in front of this. Where you would like to take the relationship in the next 2.5 years during your tenure?
So forward, clearly, much greater levels of trade, much greater levels of investment. I would love to be able to celebrate free, open, fair, transparent elections, and to engage with whomever the people choose on how to work with Bangladesh going forward, continued cooperation on law enforcement, and continued support and cooperation on dealing with the Rohingya here.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for your valuable time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
থ্যাংক ইউ। দর্শক, আমরা কথা বলছিলাম যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের রাষ্ট্রদূতের সঙ্গে, তিনি যেমনটি বলছেন আগামী 50 বছরে বাংলাদেশ যুক্তরাষ্ট্র সম্পর্ক নতুন একটি উচ্চতায় যাবে, এবং যে 50 বছর বাংলাদেশ এবং যুক্তরাষ্ট্র পার করে এসেছে সেটি তার চেয়ে অনন্য হবে, এবং সেই সম্পর্কের সূত্র ধরে জোরালো হবে বন্ধুত্ব, এবং নিশ্চিত হবে নিরাপত্তা, সুশাসন, গণতন্ত্র, মানবাধিকার এবং এই অঞ্চলের সার্বিক উন্নয়ন। সেই প্রত্যাশা আমাদেরও, সেই প্রত্যাশা শেষ করছি। ভালো থাকবেন সবাই, অনেক ধন্যবাদ সঙ্গে থাকার জন্য।